Again, just for a little bit of introduction, I'm a medical doctor. I'm a family physician, but right now, for full disclosure, I'm doing clinical research. I'm a certified clinical researcher, and I do it for Mighty Dove. I do it for a big pharmaceutical company as well. And what we are about to share with you, we do this every month, usually at the end of the month on a Saturday. What I do is share my findings to friends. And so, welcome, and I hope you would enjoy what I have to present. All right, because this concerns every single one of us. Now today, for this Saturday, our topic is on a very familiar topic, diabetes. In fact, maybe, I'm not sure, maybe more than half of us are affected with this particular malady. If I'm not correct, then correct me. Because diabetes is now a pandemic, worldwide problem. And so today we're going to be talking about it. What is it? How does it start? And what can we do about it? All right? So let's take a closer look at diabetes. Now, first of all, when we talk about diabetes, people would always say, oh, I know, carbohydrates. I'm not going to eat carbohydrates. I hate carbohydrates. They're my enemy. Well, guess what? Food is always an ally. All right? Food is friend. All right? Food, especially carbohydrates, the ones that we really love and eat all the time, gives us energy. Carbohydrates in particular, they are what we call as go foods. Right? Why are they called go foods? Because they make us go. They're the fuel of our cells and our body as well. We have 75 trillion cells, and every single one of them need fuel. Just like our cars need gas, the cells of our body need carbohydrate. So carbohydrate is not the problem here. It's too much of it that becomes the problem. Let me just give you a scale of the problem. You eat a bar of Snickers. Do you know how many teaspoons of table sugar you are going to be eating? A bar of Snickers, a full bar. Just this portion is like 4.5 teaspoons of sugar. And the whole bar itself is a lot of sugar, if you're going to finish one. But I know we just had the Halloween weekend. We ate more than our share of the Snickers bar. I guess some of us ate 2 in one sitting, and that's trouble. Reese's peanut butter cups, 1 cup, 5 teaspoons full of sugar. 5. Chips Ahoy. Look at that. 2 to 3.5. Skittles. Oh, I've lost count. All right. One can of Coca-Cola or Pepsi is 10 tablespoons of sugar. So the problem is not carbohydrate. The problem is too much of it. Now, why is it a problem? First of all, let's look at the magnitude of the problem worldwide. Diabetes affects 346 million people worldwide. So it's not a problem of one country or one state or one county. It's the problem of everybody. 80% of this are from low to middle income countries. All right? Maybe the rich can afford not to eat sugar. All right? In 2004, 3.4 million deaths are due to diabetes, and it will go up double between 2005 to 2030. So it's a growing problem. That's my point. And type 2 diabetes accounts for most of it. And type 2 diabetes, if you're in the healthcare profession, you know that it's something that you acquire, not that you're born with. Correct? And it says something about the lifestyle that we have right now. Because more and more people are having or being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. In the United States, 25.8 million people are diabetic, which is like almost 10%, 8.3% of the population. And it will grow. 18 million are diagnosed, while 7 million people are walking undiagnosed. This is why this is a big problem. Almost 30% of them are elderly, over 65 years. And it's now the leading cause of kidney failure and amputations and gangrene. Amongst ethnicities, Filipino Americans have the highest incidence of diabetes, with a prevalence rate of 19% in America and 27% in the Philippines. Huge concern for all of us. Socioeconomic impact, 558 billion in China is lost to diabetes. Go figure. All right? Even China now is having diabetes, and it will grow. And the incremental cost from diagnosis to until you die is like 8 years lost in your time. So why are we talking about this? Because the morbidity, the death, the mortality of cardiovascular diseases is higher in people that are diabetic than the people that are not diabetic. So if you're hypertensive and diabetic, your risk is 2 to 4 times greater than if you're not diabetic. Now, ultimately, according to the American Diabetes Association, we need to start early treatment. And that's what we're trying to figure out. What can we do about this? And so, we need to first know what the disease is, and then know what we can do about it. Now, diabetes, of course, we know the normal levels. Fasting should be less than 110. And you're diabetic if your number is 126 over. If your hemoglobin A1C is more than 6, 7, definitely you're diabetic. We need to bring it down to 5 or below. All right? Otherwise, long-term problems would be complications like strokes, retinopathies, heart disease, kidney disease, and all these problems will be our future. So now let's understand first what happens, why we do have diabetes, by reviewing a little bit of how the body metabolizes or uses carbohydrate. Okay? So this is going to be the science part of the whole lecture. Now, when we eat starch, which is our main source of sugar, starch comes in the form of complex carbohydrates. So you eat them. All right? So in our mouths, we have glands, salivary glands, that already secrete the enzyme that breaks them apart. And if they're not broken apart here, they're going to be the enzyme, alpha-glucosidase, in the small intestine to further break them apart so that they could be small enough, simple enough to enter our blood circulation. Big carbohydrates like this cannot enter our blood circulation. They had to be snipped and cut into simple sugars. Then they can cross and go into our blood. So now once they cross, once now in the blood, guess what? Pancreas kicks in. They sense the presence of these molecules and then creates or sends insulin, which is the hormone that opens the doors in the cells and the gates so that sugar can literally go inside the cell. And once inside the cell, they're transformed by the energy factories of the cell to become the energy currency of the body, which we all call as ATPs, correct? And that's the energy currency of the body. And that's how we use and transform carbohydrate into energy. Wonderful. I know you've learned this, all right, somewhere. Now, along the way, there's an enzyme that facilitates this, and it will come up later on. That's why I'm mentioning it right now. It's called PI3 kinase that participates in the opening and closing of the gates in every cell. Just remember PI3 kinase. This enzyme will play a big part in diabetes and in the treatment of diabetes. So, now what happens if we have too much sugar in the system? More than the cells can use, more than the cells can accommodate. If you have more than the required sugar intake, guess what? Most of this glucose will be stored in 2 areas. 1 in the liver as glycogen, and then 2 in the adipose tissue as fat cells. And it is true that if you eat carbohydrates, you'll have more fats. You can have more fats. So that's the myth. People say, if I don't eat fat, I'm not going to build fat. Wrong. Because if you eat a lot of carbohydrates, some of it, maybe most of it, will be converted into adipose tissue for future use. Okay? So they can be stored if we don't use them. Now, what is diabetes? It's simply a group of diseases characterized by high sugar glucose levels in the blood. Okay? And it's a result of the body's inability to either produce insulin or take insulin or process insulin. Okay? So the word diabetes actually is from the Greek word which means a siphon, and a Greek physician described it as diabetes because he sees patients pass water like a siphon. And we know that one of the telltale signs of diabetes is polyuria. You pee a lot. So that's where the word comes from. And mellitus means honey or sweet. He also observed that ants tend to drink from the pee. It's sweet. So that's why this is the name, the etymology of the name diabetes mellitus. Now, for our purpose, these are the key tests that we use, FSB, and of course, postprandial plasma. We're not going to go over this. Now, what happens to diabetes? Why do we have diabetes? And what is diabetes? Now, there are two main types of diabetes. The first one is type 1, the one that you're born with. It's a dysfunction in the cells that produce insulin in your pancreas. Insulin is the key that opens the doors so that sugar can come in. And in type 1 diabetes, the problem is there's not enough keys. Why? Because the key producers, the beta islets, are not functioning properly. Type 1 diabetes, they're born with it. Before, it was called the insulin dependent because you have to take insulin now because your body cannot produce insulin. But they don't call this insulin dependent anymore. But again, the problem is it's still insulin. Type 2 diabetes is something that we acquire. The insulin levels are perfectly normal for most cases. The problem lies with the receptors of insulin, the keyholes. They do not respond to the keys. The insulin is trying to turn it on, but it won't turn on. It won't open the gates. And so in both cases, your cells cannot take in glucose. And so it goes back into the system. Now, because your cells are not taking in glucose, it's starving despite the presence of sugar in the system. Does that make sense? Now, it's going to call out for help and say, I'm hungry, please feed me. And the feedback mechanism of the body will kick in. Your stored sugars, both in the liver and in the adipose tissues, will be broken down now and will be sent to the bloodstream. Now you have a big problem. One, you have plenty of sugar already waiting to come into the cell. Two, you have more sugar coming from the storage area and flooding your blood circulation. And that's why when you test your blood, your sugar is what? Very high. Because the problem is you already have sugar there and they're still pouring out sugar from the storage areas. This is the problem for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Does that make sense? Now, what happens if you have too much sugar in the system? Well, a host of symptoms will start to appear. And these are just practically some of the major ones that we know. One, you're always tired. Why am I tired? I just ate. I'm tired. Because your cells are not getting in the sugar and producing enough ATPs and energy. So people who are diabetic, they're always tired. They're always sleepy. Right? Two, you go to the bathroom all the time. Too much sugar in the blood crowds the blood circulation, so now you have to unload some of these fluids out. So you go to the bathroom all the time. Sudden weight loss. Again, your cells are not eating properly. Wounds that won't heal. Now you cannot repair your own problems. And others, like you're always hungry, even sexual problems, blurring of vision if there's sugar in the retina, you're always thirsty, numbness and tingling at the feet, and of course, vaginal infection. These are some of the known symptoms of diabetes, right? Further complications, terrible. Cataracts, angina, end-stage renal problems, and on, gangrene, resulting to amputations. And these are the long-term complications of uncontrolled diabetes. I hope I have already emphasized the fact that diabetes is a huge problem. And it's a big problem right now because this is a killer disease. Now, what can we do about this? Well, right now, the go-to is medication. Correct? If you've been diagnosed with diabetes, what do doctors do? Well, you have a host of blood-lowering medicines here. One of them, and let me just give you some ideas. We'll not name names. We'll not name medications here because we're being taped. Okay? Some of them, biguanides, they reduce glucose production from the liver. They tell the liver, don't break down glycogen and send them to the blood. All right? That's one. Others, alpha-glucosidase inhibitors, tell the enzymes in the small intestine, don't break down complex carbohydrates and turn them into simple sugars. All right? Another, sulfonylureas, they talk to the pancreas and tell them, can you please increase your insulin production a little bit more? All right? And others, they talk to the skeletal muscle and adipose tissue and say, can you please open your doors so that the extra sugar that's in the lobby can be accommodated in so we don't have too much sugar in the bloodstream? So these are the 4 areas where our so-called medications work. And you might be, if you're diabetic now, taking 1 or 2 of them. All right? So are you taking any of this? So you know, some of your drugs talk to the liver, some of them talk to the pancreas, maybe small intestine, not very popular, or the skeletal muscles or adipose tissues. That's our go-to product right now. Now, I've been studying diabetes for a long time now, and I've been looking at alternative treatments. Let me talk to you a little bit about this mushroom. Have you heard of Ganoderma lucidum? All right, the Japanese will call this Reishi, the Chinese will call this Lingxi. It's a fan-shaped or kidney-shaped, huge, bright red mushroom that grows on the trunk of hardwood trees in tropical forests. Now, this mushroom has been used by traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years. Its history goes all the way back to the first Chinese emperor, Qin Shi Huangdi. And if you open the writings, you would find Reishi there or Lingxi there all the time. And they use them for all sorts of things like longevity, memory problems, and it's been called as the herb of the kings. Now, recently, universities like UCLA, Stanford, Indiana, Chicago University, they've been looking at this. And they've been validating the findings of traditional Chinese medicine. All right? Over 300 compounds have been discovered. Today, we don't pick them from trees anymore. They're being grown commercially in cabanas, somewhere in China, in Japan, and in Southeast Asia. All right, and tons of them are being produced still today. If you walk to any downtown Chinese pharmacy, you'd still see them in jars being dispensed by traditional Chinese doctors. They work all the time. So I've been looking at this for a while, and I've been studying, and I found, you know what? Big universities like Indiana found that Ganoderma works on breast cancer or works on leukemia. UCLA study says it works on leukemia, lymphoma, and myeloma. So big universities are saying it really works. All right? So they found out it works as antioxidants. So I asked the question, does it work also for diabetes? Okay? So these are some of the studies. So I reviewed the literature. I went to the journals. That's my job. I'm a clinical researcher. I'm going to be just mentioning a few of this, and then we're going to tie all this together. All right? First, a group of Japanese doctors in 1985, as far as 1985, found that, guess what? Elements in the mushroom increase insulin levels in the body. It talks to the pancreas and enables the pancreas to increase insulin levels, just like one of our drugs. All right? In year 2000, in China, they also found out that it talks to the pancreas to increase the release of insulin in the beta islets of the pancreas, just like some of our drugs do. Okay? Next, in New Zealand, 2004, a 4-week study found out that it lowers blood sugar levels comparable to one of the more popular anti-diabetic pills, Gabeclamide. In Seoul, Korea, 2004, they also isolated a compound that inhibits the enzyme alpha-glucosidase, and it works in the small intestine, just like one of the drugs do, acarbose. In 2006, in South Korea, it talks to the, remember PI kinase? It talks to the liver and stops the liver from producing any more sugar, just like one of the drugs. 2009, Hong Kong, this one, they did this, and it reduces plasma sugar levels in diabetic and obese mice. 2009, in Egypt, all right, it also lowers blood sugar, fasting blood sugar levels in just 2 weeks of treatment, significantly. 2011, from Norway, lowers blood sugar levels as well as, guess what? Triglyceride and total bad cholesterol. All right, so we've reviewed this literature, and what does reishi really do? And this is what we found. All right, one, like acarbose, it stops the enzyme from breaking down complex carbohydrates into simple sugars. 2, it also, like sulfonylureas, talks to the pancreas and helps pancreas release more insulin. 3, okay, it talks to the liver, reducing glucose production, and talks to the skeletal muscles to increase glucose uptake, like metformin or bigonides. Okay? So these are the 4 areas that you can find reishi working. And if you look at this diagram, guess what? Reishi covers not just one, but all 4 mechanisms of action that medicines use to lower blood sugar levels, but in a natural way. And this got me excited. Why am I going to take one pill when I can take an herb that does not just one, but all 4 mechanisms of action for diabetes? Now, in Canada, guess what? This is the Canadian Journal on Diabetes, and on the section of complementary and alternative medicine, guess what? They have already officially embraced Ganoderma, and they're now allowing their doctors to recommend this to their patients, amongst others. There's a clinical study in 2004 and found out that in 12 weeks, it significantly reduced sugar in human beings. All right, there's one more that prevents the complications of diabetes in the eyes, cataract, and on and on. So, knowing what we know right now, you know what we did in 2008? We formulated our own Ganoderma product. So instead of our friends going over to Chinatown and getting and boiling this mushroom, we decided we're going to create our own supplement. So we've named this Red Reishi. And Red Reishi contains 200 milligrams of the pure extract of the mushroom. You don't have to boil it. You don't have to do anything with it. Just take it as a capsule. Now, for diabetics, here's our experience. If you're diabetic and your sugar is really high, we recommend 4 capsules every day. There'll be 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon or evening to start the process of lowering your blood sugar levels. All right? Now, some people might require more, others might require less. Some people respond to one or two. But we've seen over a period of so many years now, 2008, 2014 is like, how many years? 6 years. Okay? My math is wrong now. 6 years, we've already seen people experiencing a reduction in their blood sugar levels and hemoglobin A1C with at least 4 capsules of this every day. And then if your sugars go down, then you can maybe lower your intake to just 2 every day. But I always recommend, to begin with, if your sugar is really high, maybe 126, 200, start with 4 a day, 2 in the morning, and 2 in the afternoon or evening. Now, because this is not a drug, it's a supplement, you don't need prescription. All right? You don't need the doctor's permission. You can take this like you're taking your vitamin C. If you're already taking metformin or biguanide or gilblincamide, whatever you're taking, yes, you can take this as a supplement. And it will help your, whatever you're taking, your drug, your medication, do a fantastic job of lowering your blood sugar levels and keeping it within the normal range. Use this as a supplement every day. Of course, I don't have to say this. Exercise is really good too, right? And watching what you eat is wonderful. All right, now that you know what you know, maybe instead of eating 1 or 2 bars of Snickers every day, maybe eat 1/4 of it, just 1/4 of it every day, knowing what you know. Maybe instead of taking a glass of or a can of Coke, maybe water would be a best substitute. So watching what we eat, exercise, taking your medication, and of course supplementation like this will help you get ahead in the fight, in your fight with diabetes. And with that, I would like to thank you